everybody, welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. So today we are going to talk about the new television series based on Star Wars. It's part of the Star Wars universe, I guess. So far, I've really been enjoying this show. There's only been, I think, 6 episodes so far. It's probably going to have a maximum of 8, I assume. That's the trend these days. But of the 6 I've seen, I've really enjoyed it. I do recommend that you watch it. I want to talk a bit about Star Wars, actually quite a lot about Star Wars, because I think it's kind of important to understand what Star Wars is in order to understand why I like this. All right, so let's go all the way back. I got a bunch of notes here. So Star Wars came out, I think, in 77. This is not a bunch of facts. I want to make that very clear. This is just me and my own imagination talking about Star Wars. Okay, none of this is like some documented weird interview somewhere or something. This is just what I'm thinking about it, okay? So I think it was 77 when Star Wars came out. I was 6 or 7 years old. I loved it, right? I feel like George Lucas sat down with a bunch of marketing experts and he said, I want to make all the money. Who do I pander to make all the money? And I use the term pander, of course, because that's the term that, for some reason, YouTube people, well, the crap lords on YouTube are using in order to kind of give, I guess, capitalism a bad name, I guess, right? So who do companies pander to in order to get all the money, which is their only goal at all, obviously. And I believe George Lucas really qualifies as a company like this. I mean, he doesn't, I hate to say it because I love Star Wars and I like George Lucas because I've just kind of, in a really weird way, grown up with him, right? I don't think he's very artistic. You know what I mean? I think he just wants all the money and he's figuring out how to do it, which is pretty amazing. Even if it doesn't make him the best filmmaker in the world, at least he's doing something, right? So he sits down. He says, how do I make all the money? Who do I pander to? And they show him this picture. Now, not exactly this picture, of course, because this is me and my brother at Christmas time opening Star Wars toys, right? That's not Chris. That's my other brother. They explained to him that the best market to appeal to is middle-class kids. If you appeal to middle-class kids, then you're going to have them for a long time, and you'll be able to sell them marketing stuff for a long time. And George Lucas, of course, takes that to toys, which is brilliant, right? That's probably the most brilliant thing he did. The people that he hired to do the tech for Star Wars did develop a lot of new, amazing things for film, right? Most films owe a lot of what they're achieving today to what was done in Star Wars. Whether they're literally using Industrial Light and Magic to do their effects, or if they're using another company that just does what Industrial Light and Magic does, right? I mean, it's huge. It's the industry standard, I would say. So that's an amazing contribution, but also the idea of making a kid's movie and then making a toy line for the kids' movie and making sure that you get a lot of the profit from the toys, it's brilliant, right? He figured out how to get all the money, which is pretty genius. And he pandered right to me, you know. Like I remember hearing those commercials on the radio with Darth Vader breathing and the sound of the ships flying and all the laser shooting, and right, it was crazy. That was a movie we had to go and see, and we did go and see it. And it was huge. Everybody loved it, right? Because it's so generic. It's so black and white. There's no moral dilemma. There's no artistic questioning of our culture. There's nothing like that, right? It's just straight up good guy versus bad guy. And he talks about how he really just kind of wanted to recreate those Flash Gordon serials that would be in movie theaters, right? If you ever went to the Saturday matinees as kids, I don't know if they do that anymore, but it used to be that on Saturday, parents could just send their kids off to the movie theater, and they'd show a bunch of cartoons, and they'd show Old Yeller or something weird, and then a couple Flash Gordon episodes, just weird stuff just to keep the kids entertained for 4 hours while their parents could just chill. But I don't know if that's a thing anymore. And he succeeded really, really well. Like, honestly, it's completely vapid. It says nothing except bad is bad and good is good, and they fight each other, right? That's like the whole thing. And sometimes good wins, I guess you could throw in there, right? So he's just got this weird, vapid smash hit on his hands, and he makes all the money. It goes incredibly well. So then he decides he's going to make another one, right? So he decides to do Empire Strikes Back. And he has another stroke of genius, I gotta say. He decides that the second one shouldn't have the bad guys lose as bad as they do in the first one. It's okay to kind of have a dark one in addition to the light one that you already made. So he makes Empire Strikes Back, and it's a big hit, right? But I believe personally, his marketing experts were in the back room going, I don't know, this is getting to kind of be for older people. You said you wanted all the money, not most of the money. I don't know. So he makes it. It does just fine. It does very, very well. It's a smash hit, right? There's more toys and people buy more toys. But it isn't quite Star Wars. It was darker. It grew up a little bit with me, and I really appreciated that. And I love Empire Strikes Back. And for people my age, it might be their favorite one of the whole kit and caboodle, right? It kind of is for me. I think Empire Strikes Back is my favorite. Although I rewatched it recently. I shouldn't say recently. It's weird when you get old, as most of you probably know. Like, 15 years ago is like recent for me. It's weird. But anyway, I rewatched it, and the beginning is a little bit comedic, right? It's a little bit silly, which is okay. It's fine. I mean, it truly is just vapid escapism. That's all it is. And there's nothing wrong with vapid escapism. It's just vapid. I don't know how else to put it. It's just silly, But for a lot of people that are my age, that's probably their favorite film of all of them. But I feel like George Lucas thought, dang, I didn't get all the money. I just got almost all the money. Okay, so I need to get back to the 7-year-olds. So then he makes Return of the Jedi. And Return of the Jedi was horrible for me. I was pissed. It was so stupid and so bad. Like, after Empire came out, there was all these rumors floating around, right? Like, Darth Vader lied to Luke, that he really wasn't his dad. I think James Earl Jones literally has come out and said that as he was recording the line, he was thinking to himself, wow, he's lying. You know what I mean? Because that's not the way Star Wars works. It's not that gray. Darth Vader's the bad guy. Bad guys don't have good kids. That doesn't make sense. That's not how that world works. That's bringing up kind of weird moral questions and what the hell's going on. Doesn't really seem like Star Wars. So that was a rumor. Another rumor was that it was going to take place on the Wookiee planet, which would have been incredible, right? I mean, these characters that were introduced are some of people's favorite characters of all time. Han Solo and Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia and Chewbacca and C-3PO and R2-D2. I mean, it's just crazy how popular these characters are. And the reason I believe that they're so popular is because they're just stereotypes, right? It's just the pure version of each type of person. It's so basic that anybody can kind of cling to it. But Return of the Jedi was very disappointing for me, specifically because of stupid things. I'll just go through a couple. Number one, the way they offed Boba Fett was just horrible. At the end of Empire Strikes Back, I think Yoda says, "No, there is another," right? Which created this whole big thing. Who's the other Jedi, right? And people were like, "Oh, it's got to be Chewbacca," or I was thinking it's got to be Boba Fett, right? I mean, everybody had their opinions about it. And to have it be Princess Leia, which is a brilliant choice, except for the fact that she doesn't use the Force. Like, I don't feel like Princess Leia suddenly becomes this Force using badass in Return of the Jedi, which she kind of would need to be, right? I feel like we wanted to see more of that, and all we get is the stupid bikini thing and the strangling with the rope, and I mean it's so silly. It's just, and all the Muppets and the I mean, it's a disaster. It truly is a disaster. But 7-year-olds loved it, right? Toy sales shot through the roof. I mean, everybody had that stupid Rancor thing and the weird little pig guys, and it did incredibly well. And I was super pissed because Empire Strikes Back kind of grew up with me, but Return of the Jedi did not. And Jared actually, I think in film school, Jared made a movie called Revenge of the Jedi. I believe that's what he called it. And supposedly, it says on it, directed by David Lynch. Because I think for a tiny moment, the studio was considering David Lynch to direct the third series. Can you imagine that? If David Lynch directed Revenge of the Jedi? You know, that instead of, I mean, think of Dune, right? Think of the 80s Dune, but make it Revenge of the Jedi. I think that would have been insane. I kind of wish that would have happened, to be perfectly honest with you. But that was it for Star Wars for me. Like, I was done because I felt betrayed. And I do understand why people could feel that way about Star Wars. If you get emotionally invested in something as a child and then it doesn't mature as you mature, I think it can really feel bad. And then, of course, after that, a couple years go by and George Lucas realizes that the toy sales are slowing down, the money's slowing down. So he's like, okay, we need to get on this again. And he meets back with his team and he's like, all right, who do I need to pander to make all the money? And they show him the exact same picture. Like, literally, nothing's changed. It's the exact same picture. And he's like, well, I can't, what am I supposed to do? I can't just re-release Star Wars. And they're like, really? You know, of course. And I'm making all this up. You guys know this is just my imagination about it. But they're like, yeah, you can. And he's like, no, they suck. They're not. I mean, a lot's changed since I made those movies. I'd have to make a bunch of changes. And they're like, okay. And he's like, oh my God, I could do it. So he, of course, makes a bunch of changes. All of a sudden, A New Hope is born, right? We get this new Star Wars movie that is just Star Wars, but it's been massively overhauled. And I know before films get physical media releases, especially older films, they go through a lot. Like, almost every movie is changed from its theatrical release to the time it gets to physical media, right? Whether they're bringing up dialogue in certain points, bringing down other things, doing color corrections. There might even be a scene taken out or a scene put in. Things are changed on lots and lots of movies. But A New Hope is so extreme and so massive. You know, I mean, giving it that name for starters. And then also, of course, the whole Guido shooting first thing, right? That's big. That was a big change, right? To take away Han Solo's badassness, you know, for all of us 7-year-olds, when he shot that guy under the table, I mean, it's crazy. And of course, that's why George Lucas wanted to take it out. You know, whether it was done accidentally during the editing or, I mean, who knows? but I think he stated that it wasn't his intention for it to be that way. You know, the way that it ended up was the way it had been intended all the time, which is legit. You know, that's fine. It's just that if you watch something once again when you're 7 and you make it your own, you know, it's hard. That's a weird thing. So he re-releases it. It makes a ton of money. It does incredibly well, right? The older fans are not happy, but the 7-year-olds, oh my gosh, right? They're loving it. And the toy sales shoot through the roof. And then, you know, he can redo the next one. He can redo the next one. He's got another good 10 years of getting all the money. It's great for him, right? But then, over time, money starts to slow down a little. He gets back together with his team. And he's like, okay, I'm not doing the same thing again. I don't want to do it again. I'm going to continue to tweak those because that's my favorite pastime, right? I'm going to tweak them some more. We're going to do more physical releases, but I need to make something new. So what can I do that's new to make all the money? And maybe they show him some picture like this, right? It's a little bit different. This is a little bit more intelligent and clinical. Okay, let's get going, right? And he makes a whole new batch of Star Wars movies. And we went and saw him, you know, opening night, of course, midnight, right? We're at the theater. Everybody's there in their costumes and all that shit. And then Star Wars comes up, everybody's cheering, right? And oh my God, it did not go well for me, right? Of course. I don't even know why I went, to be perfectly honest with you. It was terrible for me. We stayed up all night, I think, out on the balcony, just smoking cigarettes and talking smack about the new Star Wars movie, right? I'm sure our neighbors were thrilled. Not good. Not good at all for me, right? But over time, you begin to realize that all the kids who saw that when they were 7 love it. They love it. There's a whole new generation of crazy Star Wars fans that are out buying toys and, you know, as they get older, they get tattoos and they have Star Wars themed weddings. And I mean, it's incredible. It completely worked. It didn't work for me, but at this point, it's like, dude, who cares? You know, like I go see a movie in the theater probably once these days. As a 17-year-old, I probably saw Say Anything 12 times in the theater, right? Fish Called Wanda, I probably saw that thing like 9 times. These teams know what they're talking about. They understand who is going to spend money on the movie that they're making. They know their audience. So that works just fine, right? Not for me, but for the 7-year-olds, it's great. So then a bunch of time goes by and the whole thing happens again. They show them another picture. It probably looks something like this now because the world, of course, is changing, obviously. We've all heard the dumb statistics like on average, and that's a very important phrase, on average, girls get better grades than boys do. On average, people who rent property would probably prefer to rent to a female because they're more reliable. Employers are more likely to hire females than they are males on average because they're more reliable. More women go to college than men on average, right? We hear all this stuff, and the reason I point out on average so hard is because I do want to state that you can go to college and not make money. I am living proof of that, straight up, right? My brother and I, we're not rolling in the dough. Let's just put it that way. And I got some buddies that I don't know that either of them ever went to college. I'm not positive, but I don't think either of them ever went to college. They've been in construction their whole lives, and they're millionaires, straight up, you know? And I know that they're not the norm, right? And Chris and I aren't the norm. We made extreme choices and they made extreme choices. And it worked really well for them and it didn't work at all for us. So the world's changing, right? the people who are going to go to movies time after time after time may not be your average 15-year-old boy anymore, right? It may be a 15-year-old girl, I guess, you know? I know that things are changing. So, they show him that picture, and then he's got a whole new idea for a bunch of Star Wars movies. They come out. I went and saw them. I enjoyed them. You know, it was at least slightly different, and that was nice. You know, I didn't have to watch some young white kid decide that he needed to go out and blow up the Death Star again, who was born on the loneliest, most backward planet in the universe, where it seems like every single thing in the universe happens again, right? It all seemed kind of new, and I appreciated, I think it was the second one, the director in the second one, I appreciated a lot of his visuals. There was some neat stuff. I liked the white ground, but as the ships flew over it, underneath was red. That was really interesting and cool to look at. I appreciated the burning cloth in the background. You know, there's that lightsaber fight between the good guy and the bad guy. And I think somehow the cloth starts on fire and they're actually in this glass dome that looks directly out into space, I guess. And as the cloth burns, it just reveals space. That was pretty cool looking, right? There's the weird light speed suicide thing where the ship just goes. I mean, I swear it was right outside an anime, right? Right out from an anime. The light beam shoots, and then there's that flash, and then you hear the explosion or whatever. Right before it hits, the guy's like, "Put up the shields, put up the shields," right? That was interesting. Like, I appreciated some of the artistic choices, mostly in that second one. I'm not the biggest J.J. Abrams fan. I do like him. You know, I liked Lost, at least for the first little while. It was pretty fun. It was interesting. But after time, I think you kind of get J.J. Abrams' gimmick. You know, it sort of sinks in what he likes to do. The idea of just asking questions. I don't know. I wonder, you know. And then it ends, and you're like, okay, so what happened? You know. But they were okay, right? They at least were slightly different. It was still just completely vapid escapism, right? I don't remember much of anything from them. But it was okay. But the weird thing is we start to get these outliers, right? As Disney starts to get involved and George Lucas starts to give a tiny bit of ground with Star Wars, you get things like Rogue One, right? Rogue One comes out, and Rogue One is mature, right? It's I'd say it's more mature than Empire Strikes Back, to be perfectly honest. It's not black and white. It's very gray. And I think for a lot of older fans, that was kind of appealing. It was really neat to see a story in that universe that wasn't the main story. That was a lot of fun, and I really wish that more of these universe TV shows could kind of learn from that, you know? Like the Lord of the Rings stuff. I feel like the Lord of the Rings would not have had nearly the backlash that it does have if they hadn't made it about anything that the Lord of the Rings is about, right? It should have been about some small town in Middle Earth that keeps getting attacked by orcs, and how do they eventually stop the orcs from pillaging their town constantly. That would have been great, right? It would have been super fun. It would have nothing to do with anything. There wouldn't be any kind of, well, in the fourth book, it clearly states that, you know, you wouldn't have to deal with any of that. I don't know why they feel like they need to have the same characters. You don't need the same characters. Right at the same time, Solo came out. Solo did not do well. I think that Disney realized that they didn't have to only pander to 7-year-olds. They could pander to the older fans. And of course, they wouldn't get all the money by pandering to the older fans, but they would get some money, you know. It did fairly well. Rogue One did just fine. I think people were very pleased. older fans were very pleased, even if the kids weren't ecstatic, There's not many 7-year-olds trying to buy the lead character in Rogue One in an action figure, I don't think they care that much, but still, I think it was a neat, good step for Star Wars in general to kind of realize, hey, we can also pander to this older crowd. And they also decided to, of course, they created their streaming service, right? But they also decided to start making TV shows, if you can call them that, right? These miniseries, TV miniseries, these kind of 8-episode things that they could release on their streaming service and hopefully get people signed up for it. And I think, and I'm going to mess all this up, I'm sorry, like I said, this isn't about facts, this is just my ideas about Star Wars. They decided to do The Mandalorian, and The Mandalorian exploded. It was so huge. Everybody loved it, right? Boba Fett was a huge character for the people who loved that original series. And, of course, bringing in the clones and all. There was all those cartoons about clones. And, I mean, that Boba Fett character is massive. So when they make The Mandalorian, right, the idea of seeing this bounty hunter and this bounty hunter's life was so exciting. And then to put in that incredible twist, there's going to be some spoilers, right? Sorry, I should have said that earlier, but everybody's seen all this crap. To put in that incredible twist in the end that he finds a baby. He's supposed to kill a baby, and he decides he doesn't want to, so he keeps the baby. It's huge. That first episode is incredible. Honestly, that show only went downhill from there. There's no way they could keep that kind of pace up. It was just too good. It was so good. And The Mandalorian does have a couple other good episodes. There's the Kurosawa ripoff where they got to protect the town. I think somebody's got an AT-AT or something that they're going to attack the town with, and they got to set up defenses, right? It was pretty cool. That was a fun one. There's the one where he has to take his mask off. Right? He's in the lunchroom. I don't know what's going on, but there's good stuff in The Mandalorian, but nothing touches that first episode. It's so incredible. I think that's the reason we actually signed up for Disney Plus, to be honest with you, was The Mandalorian for that first season. It was just incredible. That works. That's massively successful for them. And then they try to keep it up, but they move on to, I don't know exactly what was next, but I think that, I think Kenobi was right in there somewhere, and Kenobi just did not do it, man. Kenobi was not great. My point for all of this blabbing that I've been doing, there have been different generations of Star Wars fans created, and each of those generations wants more of what they got. And it's impossible to please them all, especially the old people, right? The bottom level where I am, it's not going to happen, I'm super picky and I'm already pissed off, and, it's not going to work, right? So there's a lot going against these shows. They have to decide, who are we making this for? And I think the default answer is always either the previous generation, the closest one to where we are, or the 7-year-olds. It's going to be one of those two answers. So everybody below that is not happy, Now, I hope and I am aware that there's a point that you reach where you just realize the world's changed. That's not for me. You know what I mean? Star Wars is not made for me, period. No one in their right mind would say, I think Jason's got a little bit of money that he could fork over this way. We should make $1 million movie. Million, it's probably more like 50 million, right? Something ridiculous like that. We should make a huge budget movie to try to get Jason's $9 for the matinee price, right? Nobody's going to do that. It's just stupid, They're going for the younger people, of course. They're the ones with the most expendable income. So Kenobi comes out and it's just poorly put together. I do not know what happened. Like the two best parts of Kenobi, not specific things, but the two best ideas in Kenobi are young Princess Leia, super fun. That was a brilliant choice, right? To just put this little scrappy kid in. Excellent. And also Darth Vader's psychotic sidekick. That was pretty cool. I did like that. That was kind of fun. I think the actress was amazing who played it. And wow, what a creepy, weird, she's looking for revenge, but she's trying to work her way up so she can get to Darth Vader, and none of it works, of course, right? It can't work because Darth Vader's still alive later. So that's kind of silly, but yeah, very interesting, very weird. I appreciated those things. I think they were probably the most appealing for somebody my age. But the weird Darth Vader Kenobi stuff, the fighting in the fire, and then he falls in the hole and when they're fighting another time, but nobody checks to make sure he's dead, and I don't know what's going on. Like it was, it was kind of a mess, and it didn't do really well. I don't think, but that's the craziest thing about all of this, right? How many people signed up for Disney Plus because they knew Kenobi was coming out? I have no idea. Nobody really has any idea. All that Disney can do is look and see how many people are signed up. They can see what people watch. I guess you could check what's the first thing they watch after they sign up. Maybe they can try to use those statistics to try to see what drew them into Disney Plus. Right? The whole thing is just bizarre. Does Disney Plus make money? I don't know. They take my money. I guess I would assume so, but I do feel really weird about the shows that they make, how expensive these productions are. I really feel like if they just made TV shows, 30 episodes all on the same set and just TV show, I feel like they would spend less and therefore their monthly revenue would yield more profit, I feel like, but I don't know. I don't know. Because I don't think anybody, aside from the company itself, really has access to that kind of information, I would assume that Disney Plus is doing pretty well. I do feel like Kenobi wasn't very good. I feel like there was some weird things that happened plot-wise that just didn't make a lot of sense. And you guys know, if you watch the Inception video, you understand how my brain works. They have this weird escape tunnel, right? And Princess Leia is sent off into the escape tunnel, right? She's like 7 and she's cruising down this tunnel, right? And the bad guy finds the tunnel and the bad guy goes in the tunnel behind her. And then she pops out at the end of the tunnel and the spaceship's right there, but the bad guy's ahead of her. And it's like, what happened? Was there a shortcut in the tunnel that Princess Leia didn't know about? And why didn't we know about it if it existed? Or did she turn around and go back out of the tunnel and just assume that it went to the shipyard? So then she caught a taxi and drove to the shipyard? I don't know. I don't know what happened, right? Just weird things. And there was more, but I don't remember them anymore because we watched it long ago. But I don't really want to remember them because it's just not that good. You know what I mean? But those two characters, I think, were really strong. I really appreciated that. Then, as far as I remember, Boba Fett came out. I don't remember a lot about Boba Fett. I think the biggest problem with the Boba Fett TV show was that it took him a really long time to become Boba Fett. I know that's kind of a weird thing to say because, of course, he was already Boba Fett. It starts with him after his really stupid death in Return of the Jedi. It starts with him in the pit, right? He climbs out of the pit, and then he's, like, really sick and beat up for, like, 4 episodes. I don't know, something crazy. Like, it took way too long for him to actually become Boba Fett. There was a pretty cool train heist, I think, and then, of course, in the end, he rides the monster. I don't know. It was a weird one. I love that Jake the Muss is Boba Fett. There's a film called Once We're Warriors I don't know the actor's name who plays Boba Fett, but he's also Boba Fett in the second series, in the prequels, whatever the heck it is. He's he's the same actor, right? So the guy who plays Boba Fett is in a movie called Once Were Warriors, and that's an Australian film, and his character is named Jake the Muss, and he is crazy. Once Were Warriors is a very dark, very passionate movie, but if you get a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. He's incredible in it, and I was so happy to see him playing Boba Fett. That's very, very cool. Okay, so then comes Andor, right? And once again, Andor is not a show for 7-year-olds, right? They're not going to love that. But I think a lot of the older crowd did enjoy that. I think Disney is really figuring out how they can kind of span these generations and make stories that appeal to each of them. It's less vapid, right? It's less black and white. It's more gray. It was pretty good. I did enjoy it. I think the thing that sticks out for me the most is the prison stuff, right? That seemed like the most sci-fi and the most interesting and the weirdest. I think before that it's just like a heist thing, and it's pretty good, right? But the prison stuff is really, really where it's at for that show, I believe. So finally, finally, is more appealing for older viewers. The reason it's more appealing is because it's gray. It is about, this is not a spoiler, I don't believe. It's about a group of Jedi who may have done something questionable in the past and how they deal with that. Now, we've only seen 6 episodes. We have not watched the whole thing yet. But I've seen enough to know that we're probably going to see this dark secret revealed, right? And figure out what happened and how they dealt with it and how it could have been a mistake and how they probably could have made a better choice, but they were under a lot of pressure, blah, 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 right? And that's very interesting to an older viewer, you know? Now, it has a very diverse cast, right? Which is more appealing to people who are later generations because the world has changed a little bit, right? And I don't want to make it sound like I don't enjoy diverse casting, because I absolutely do. You know, I honestly do not want to watch a soap opera about a couple of old rich white people bickering all the time. It sounds horrible, you know, or somebody who lives my life, right? Like Breaking Bad, I could not get into Breaking Bad at all, right? Because it's just this older white guy who just can't get any respect, and you know, and I know it was good. I know that the writers knew what they were doing. They created very unique, cool characters, but it's so, I mean, like I lived in New Mexico for a while. You know what I mean? It's just daily life, but really accelerated because he's making drugs, obviously. You know what I mean? You know, but it's a very diverse group of people, and they have different backgrounds, and they take things differently than you would expect them to, and the actors make different choices than you would expect, and it's really cool and interesting to watch, as opposed to the same old crap over and over again, like Mad Men, you know? Oh, great, we get to watch some rich guy feel sorry for himself. I love it. So I appreciate that. I enjoy watching different people do different things. It's very cool. And I think it's what is expected for younger generations. So I would definitely tell you to watch this show. I think it's really, really good. There's a lot of fight sequences, and it's just escapist goofiness that's a little bit gray, which is nice. It's not so black and white. It's cool. I really enjoy it. Also, I gotta point out, it's got the dude from The Good Place. It's got Mr. Jacksonville. So that alone is kind of worth watching the show. I like seeing actors getting cast in multiple roles, just seeing how different they can be if they choose to be. So I feel like Star Wars has only really committed one massive sin, and that is the fact that we cannot buy 4K versions of the original theatrical releases of the first 3 films. Now, you can get them in this tin, right? They're on the special features. So this is a DVD copy of the film, and on the special feature, there's a very low quality copy of the initial 3 films, but they've been unaffected. But this is the only way you can get them that's officially released. I know that you can buy bootlegs. I don't like to buy bootlegs personally. I would rather just make sure that people get the money that they're kind of owed for it. Also, I really want the films to receive the respect that they should be receiving. You know, there should be pristine quality 4K transfers of these Star Wars films released without all the new crap added on top of them. Just so my generation can go back and watch Star Wars the way the generation right after me can, and the way the generation after that can, and the way the generation after that can. All right, well, that was a lot of rambling just to tell you the show's pretty good. It's pretty good. You should watch it. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button. If you want to see more like it, make sure to subscribe. We got a whole bunch, and have a great day.